Shalom from Jerusalem to all the faithful viewers of Middle East Review of TV7, again here in Jerusalem, for actually the last show of the year of 2025. We will meet again next year, I guess January 2026, and we'll see what the year brings. In any case, we are here again with my good friend and, of course, Doctor and Colonel Reserve Intelligence, Eran Lerman. I'm Danny Ayalon, and we are ready to start. Thank you again for being with us. And I think that this time, as we are actually ending the year, and so many things are happening, but they're all hinging on just on a thread. Maybe, Iran, we will talk about the challenges Israel has right now in the different fronts.
Right.
Gaza, Lebanon, Hezbollah, Syria, Iran, the Judea and Samaria, and all this under this very, very looming, I would say, the looming plan or strategic guidelines of President Trump, which almost, when I saw them, that President Trump and his administration came out with a new national strategy for the United States for the next pretty much not just decades, few decades. He's talking about maybe another century. It reminded me in a way, not so much in the content, but in the scheme of things, the Monroe Doctrine of 1823, which also came up with trying to be with a comprehensive plan and guideline for the United States foreign policy. At that time was mostly, I would say, if I have to choose one word, was isolationist with the Monroe mostly. I mean, concentration on Latin America and all that. Here, it's quite different. And I think it also relates to Israel and the Middle East, because the Middle East was not at the top priority.
No.
It went down. And the top priority, yes. At the top priority, we have, of course, the Far East and China, but also Europe, the old continent, which was really never exhibited very top, very high on the American foreign policy, because it was so, it was like a no-brainer. We are talking about two allies, but here we are seeing some interesting things that were mentioned there. We will also talk about that as we bring in the Israeli challenges, and maybe we'll start with Gaza.
Well, let me first of all say, there is something distinctly interventionist, which is paradoxical, because it's not an isolationist strategy, but it's an American.
It's the opposite of isolationist. Yes.
It's America first. It's very transactional, but there's also an interventionist undertone, and all the way to Venezuela, where clearly the ultimate goal is to topple Maduro. But also in Europe,
and he's not even hiding that. It's up front.
And the whole reservations he had about regime change fade when it comes to Venezuela and what it stands for. But in Europe, it is clearly a supportive document vis-a-vis the parties, the nationalist parties of the European right, or some would say the far right. And it's very much reminiscent of the language J.D. Vance took in Munich. It's basically, whether it's Farage or Le Pen or the AfD, there is support here for a European element.
A good friend from Netherlands, Geert Wilders.
Wilders, Meloni in her own way. Trump is very clearly favoring those in Europe that go under his definition of patriots, rather than universalists.
Right.
Going back to his speech at the United Nations at the end of his previous term of office.
Of course, ranking very high is Orban from
in Hungary.
Poland also is
the previous Polish government, not the present one. which is more Europeanist and
But still, when it comes to immigration, it's more like Hungary. Even the new
policy is still everyone in Europe has closed ranks to some extent on this issue because it is so fundamental. This is also why Europe came up now with a new pact for the Mediterranean, which I recently wrote about. And because one of the key issue ultimately is how to make southern Mediterraneans happy enough to stay home rather than migrate.
And Iran, I want to bring it to the Middle East.
I'm bringing it right down to the very heart of Israeli politics because the same interventionist, unabashed interventionism was manifest recently in how Trump came in support of the pardon for Netanyahu. He's clearly trying to have the same impact also on Israeli politics in what is already by now an election year. Whether the government will hold to its full term of office in the autumn of 26, or as many predict will collapse in the spring and go to elections. We are in an election cycle. There are three major internal Israeli issues that draw attention away from all our external conflicts, namely the ultra-Orthodox draft, the question of commission of inquiry, and Netanyahu's personal future. They're all somehow interrelated, and they all sort of suck the air out of the room when it comes to trying to think in a coherent way about all other issues, because we are in an election cycle.
But having said that, we still have strategic issues which relate to the national interest of Israel as such, politics aside. And here again, we see that in all fronts, Israel, had magnificent and I would say outstanding military victories, but none of them have been translated yet to a changed political or a changed strategic landscape in the region. Maybe Iran in a little bit and the Shia crescent. But if we go back to, let's say, we'll start with Gaza, because this is on the table now as the Americans are pushing towards moving from phase 1 of the ceasefire to phase 2 of the Trump's plan, which is further withdrawal of Israel and starting to rebuild Gaza. And of course, where is the big elephant? Of course, is disarming Hamas, and we still have one missing hostage body of Staff Sergeant Gvili, which is also, I hope, will be found and brought back home soon.
But first of all, let's be frank. I wasn't sure we will come to the day in which there will only be one body missing.
Yes,
I thought Hamas would play out this issue for much longer, and
I remember the fear here that there will be many Ron Arads, the Israeli navigator, which was lost. I hope that for now more than almost 4 years.
Well, so clearly Hamas is under severe pressure from its partners, Qatar and Turkey, and from Egypt, on which they will ultimately depend, to bring things to phase 2. But I wouldn't say that nothing happens yet. Something happened, which is UN Security Council Resolution 2803, which is a remarkable document. And I think a lot of people in Israel, because it speaks of a credible path to Palestinian statehood, where thought this was a problematic step from an Israeli point of view. But it's actually a step back from the existing UN resolutions on the Palestinian issue, which speak clearly about the
very
important
point. Exactly.
And now it has brought in two major conditionals. One is profound and externally recognized reforms by the Palestinian Authority. In other words, it's not just Abbas celebrating his 95th birthday will announce a few years from now that the place has been reformed. Mm-hmm. No, there will need to be a confirmation. It doesn't explicitly say Israeli confirmation, but there needs to be confirmation that this reform has been real.
And of course, removal of Hamas.
And then the second conditional is the disarming Hamas. And by the way, it specifically mentions also terrorist infrastructure. That is to say, the tunnel system and all of that. Moreover, it's the first time ever that a UN resolution referred to the legitimacy of a perimeter that will persist under Israeli control until the day, some would say, until the elephants fly and the sea dries, but at least until Gaza is a place which no longer constitutes a threat of any kind. Right. This is far-reaching language. And amazingly, Russia and China abstained, and so
of course,
did not
veto by the United States.
But they did not veto.
They veto. I think they did not veto because all their friends in the Arab world told them not to veto.
Algeria voted for this. Exactly. I mean, this is breathtaking. And if you're an ambassador by training, I teach diplomacy from time to time. I basically think this is unprecedented for a UN resolution to go so far towards a recognition of the legitimacy of Israel's security concerns.
Hence, this resolution was very well accepted here in Israel, not just by the government, also the opposition, which also is unanimously actually joined the government, which did not participate in the vote, but it doesn't matter. The government is the one that makes things happen. So absolutely. And in that respect, I want to go to the next stage, because you're right. All the elements in the United Nations Security Council resolutions 2803 are speaking, I think, for a better future here. But what is the big but? If they're adhered to the implementation. And this is where we are now. And Israel has a few challenges here. First of all, to make sure that Hamas is being disarmed. And secondly, not less importantly, is who is going to disarm Hamas? Are we going to have Turkish soldiers?
No. And the short answer is no.
Okay. But Erdogan is putting pressure on Trump. And the question is, will Trump adhere more to the Israeli interests or to Erdogan's interests? And this is still an open question.
Okay. There's an answer in the text, which is that the International Stabilization Force, the ISF, which the resolution envisions on the basis of the 20-point plan that Trump put before us. And by the way, I recognize the imprint of some ideas that Bob Silverman and myself and others promoted for the last 2 years.
That is why it's such a good resolution. Absolutely.
I give myself the pleasure of thinking that maybe some here and there are some fingerprints. But at the end of the day, it clearly says that this should be in coordination and
consultation
with Israel and Egypt.
Right.
Which is bringing to the fore a very important question: Israeli-Egyptian relationship and the level of Israeli-Egyptian understanding.
And here they're on the same side, both Egypt and Israel against Hamas,
and
which Erdogan supports, of course.
And against overtly blatant Turkish meddling. Yes. I mean, the Egyptians and the Turks mended their fences to some extent. There's some, military exercise.
But still, there's a lot of suspicion.
But there's a lot of suspicion.
Also towards Qatar. Egypt has a lot of suspicion towards Turkey and Qatar because they know the wrath and the danger from the radical Islamists.
We saw the Qataris meddling in Israel, trying to stir up trouble between Israel and Egypt.
Yes.
So the Egyptians have every reason to be very suspicious. We have every reason to seek an understanding with Egypt. Happily, one issue between Israel and Egypt seems to have been resolved, which is the gas deal. Israeli supplier of Israeli gas.
Major step forward. Absolutely, towards
both towards the bilateral relationship, but also towards the energy integration of the Eastern Mediterranean, which is another important issue. But all of this creates the conditions for, I believe, a summit, possibly. Now, the reports are that Israel has sought such a summit. The Egyptians are still reluctant. But here the Americans could actually come in and should come in. And that's one of the things we may see in the opening weeks of the next year, or even perhaps even earlier.
Yeah. So in that case, Israel needs to stay very close with the United States, basically with Trump, who makes all the calls over there. And for that reason, I think it's a very advantageous step for Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu, to meet Mar-a-Lago in Florida, to meet with President Trump before the year ends. I think it's December 28th. And that would be a very important meeting, because this will be the meeting that will map out, hopefully, the implementation in more details, and that should be taking into account not just Israel's interest or Egypt, the region, the world, because we have to understand that the main danger here is radical Islam. And radical Islam,
Islamism.
It's the Islamism. And by the way, the Americans understand it, because if I can refer back to the looming large new strategic plan of Trump, when he talks about Europe, he talks about a crisis of identity. And what does that mean? This euphemism for immigration of Islamists that want to take control over Europe. So in that case, I hope that Trump will understand that taking care of or keeping the radical Islam at bay starts in Gaza. So in that case, maybe we can be a little optimistic. We will know next month, hopefully, where it is going. Yeah. But I want to move to the other front.
But just two more comments.
Okay.
On Gaza.
Sure.
First of all, another unbelievable thing. I mean, if you told me a few months ago that this could happen, I would have said science fiction. Yeah. In Israel, there is a compound in Kiryat Gat where Americans and Israelis working together to plan the future of Gaza at the level of military to military and civilian elements being brought. The CMCC, that's the Civilian Military Coordination Center, but also Europeans and Emiratis and Bahrainis. I mean, Arab officers, officials,
and Abraham Accord countries
working, yes, Abraham Accord countries, in an Israeli base, in a base in Israel with Americans and Israelis, General Dolph from the Israeli IDF command representing the Israeli military in this, and working together to plan effective measures for the future of Gaza. All of this is completely out of the range of expectations as they were. Again, implementation, but the foundations are remarkable. Now, the path.
There's one country of the Abraham Accord which is missing, and this is Morocco. This is not the time to discuss Morocco, but
we have an excellent relationship ongoing.
And we would welcome them actually coming in, because this can tilt also the weight or the scales towards us.
True enough, but they have reasons to be cautious.
Right.
They have an issue on their hands. Right. They've just won the most magnificent diplomatic victory ever by the UN recognition
Sahara
of their sovereignty over an autonomous Western Sahara. So I think they have enough on their plate. I can understand that, although a Moroccan plate is a good plate and tends to be quite large, but still. The second thing is, we are coming to a fork in the road, and we could either go to Israeli military operations to wipe out what's left of Hamas, which may be not as difficult as some people imagine, because Hamas is basically already broken, but still it could involve heavy fighting in densely populated areas. Not a good idea. Or alternatively, the creation of two Gazas, one rotting under Hamas and one thriving on our side of the yellow line with the help of the ISF coming in not to conquer Hamas-controlled areas, but to manage the areas from which Israel holds now and will withdraw from towards the perimeter. And the perimeter will still be held by Israel.
And it will require probably some presence of Palestinian Authority.
Semblance.
I think here Israel can give in a little and gain a lot.
Some semblance of the Palestinian police.
And vet, also Israel should be vetting.
Yes, the actual language of 2803 says a vetted component, military police, or Palestinian police, but also working side by side with the ISF military, but also a committee of non-political Gazans managing daily affairs under the guidance of the Gaza International Transitional Authority, which in turn will be under the overall management of the Board of Peace. It's a complex, extremely complex architecture. Mm-hmm. Now is the time for the decisions to implement.
So, Aram, yes, I think we have pretty much analyzed the situation, and we can be maybe cautiously optimistic about the future of Gaza. One thing which we did not want to have Gaza turn into a Lebanon, in the sense that there will be a civil government, be it technocratic people or even some Palestinian Authority, but they will be actually threatened by presence of military Hamas, which is exactly the situation where we turn into now our next front, which is Lebanon. And in Lebanon, we see it right now. It's amazing that the ceasefire from last November, still under President Biden, is still lasting. And Israel,
Israel continues to operate.
Exactly. But at the same time, Hezbollah continues to smuggle in arms from Iraq.
But they don't shoot back, which is remarkable.
Even took out 2 weeks ago the chief of staff of Hezbollah, which was one of the most radical terrorist operation.
Even his name speaks the Iranian connection.
Yes.
Because Tabatabai is an Iranian, the Persian.
His father is exactly.
It's a Persian name.
So even with taking him out, they are still quiet, but there is a lot of simmering because we need to see, again, the ceasefire implemented, and that is also talking about Hezbollah disarming. But here we see that the Lebanese army is quite weak. So where do you see this going?
Well, there are two interesting developments. One is that Israel, for the first time, and the Lebanese, for the first time, authorized a meeting between civilian officials. Our mutual friend Uri Resnick, who is now on loan from the ministry,
which was on or someplace,
and is on loan to the national security staff. And he was there. He told me that this was an excellent meeting.
Good. That's good.
And on one hand, and more voices in Lebanon openly saying we need to disarm Hezbollah. It's no longer an option. They keep talking about an ultimatum. By the end of 25, they need to get this underway, or else. And the or else is an Israeli or else.
But
the Americans.
Yes, they need thinking.
And the Americans, the American envoy, this charming woman, Morgan Ortagus, is very clear about this. Israel first of all, enjoys a free hand even now, because all these Israeli strikes, which took out about 300 Hezbollah operatives since the ceasefire. Before October 23, we were afraid to remove one tent from the Hermon mountain on our side of the border. Now we are going after their command structure and their operatives day in, day out, and not a bullet shot back.
Yes.
Deterrence has never been more absolute than it is now. But the next step is whether the Lebanese will find it in themselves to take the next step.
So for this, I would say, just to end up the Lebanese front, is we will need, of course, political backing from the United States, also from France, or at least from France, not to hinder or not to interfere on the one hand. And secondly, we need the deterrence continued with the understanding that Israel will get the green light from United States mainly to help the Lebanese army as needed, especially in the south of Litani.
We also they need guarantees against Syrian Islamists coming into Lebanon to settle the score for the Hezbollah intervention in Syria.
Yes.
And Hezbollah are now saying we need to hold to our arms, not because of Israel, because we must protect Lebanon against that danger.
Right.
So there needs to be a dual guarantee from Israel to the Lebanese.
Absolutely.
And economic carrots, as they say.
Absolutely.
And in this respect, the deal to finalize the EEZ delineation between Cyprus and Lebanon is a very important step in the right direction.
Right.
Obviously, it made Turkey angry. That's probably a good sign. Forgive me for saying it.
Absolutely, yeah. With Syria, we have to be very cautious about al-Julani, the new president, because first of all, we know not only because of his background, but what is going to happen there. His weak, exactly, and we know that they are very strong, whether it's Alawis or Shiite forces, terrorist forces, ISIS type.
Iran is once again,
and of course, Iran is meddling. So this is something which we'll have to watch. So in any way, so we have the challenges in Lebanon. It's, I think, a little bit more complicated because there are more moving parts, and because of the meddling of Turkey and Iran over there, and Syria is not strong enough and stable enough.
No, Iran will say just one thing: 1.3 million rial to the dollar.
Yes.
The Iranian economy,
yes,
which will set the stage.
And no water in the pipes. Absolutely. Well, I think that we have exhausted the issues of the main challenges of Israel vis-a-vis Hamas and Hezbollah. And next time we will discuss also Iran. We still have not to forget, we have to keep the eye on the ball, which is mainly Iran. So I hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you so much for watching. TV7 Middle East Review. We'll see you again here next month.